Hello everyone and welcome back to another Stratigoy video. We are back with another faction focus review and it's SERAPHON time. I'm super excited to see what they cooked up with these guys. I'm joined by Ryan once again. Ryan, it's your turn now to suffer a cold apparently.
Yeah, I'm a little throaty today, I guess. A little sore throatish, but I'll plow through, and it'll still probably be better than some of the videos I've made. So let's just see.
Yeah. I'm super excited. Are you in any way excited for SERAPHON? Because that's not necessarily one of your armies, is it? Is it?
Well, I guess sometimes I do a too long didn't read at the beginning of these. I'm glad to see that Seraphon has been reined in a bit. I've always felt like Seraphon was kind of had all of the tricks and none of the disadvantages.
Yeah,
That's an
half of SERAPHON.
half, yes. That's an oversimplification, and which half has been strong at any given moment
Yeah.
depends
Hmm.
on where they were. But in general, it does look like they've been kind of brought back down to the level of mortals. So, I'm curious to see how the rest of the rules play out, and curious what your opinion is.
Yeah, let's get to it. We'll tackle the battle traits first.
Yeah,
So for the battle traits, design wise and lore wise, I think this is super cool. So you pick an asterism ability, which is one of the four abilities on the right there. It's like the Slann are scrying into the stars above in the constellations, and they're building their great plan. They're thinking like, what do we need to do for this specific battle? And you pick one of those abilities, and that ability is your battle trait for the rest of the battle. Now you might think, well, Jonas, that's kind of lame because I'm losing out on three different other abilities. Well, that's only partially true because we also have further the great plan. So at the start of the third battle round, you get to choose one extra asterism to add to your continuous abilities, but you can only do it if your first asterism was sort of completed, I guess. Let's look at some examples here, maybe.
yeah,
So let's pick the first one as an example. So Itzel the Tamer, your companion weapons used by friendly Seraphon units have crit 2 hits. So let's say you picked that asterism with the Great Plan. So this is the first asterism that you've picked. At the start of the third battle round, you check the table on the left here, and you check whether you've completed those, conditions, I guess. So for Itzel the Tamer, for example, you need to have destroyed 3 or more enemy units. If you've done that, you get to choose one extra asterism to add onto the one that you previously had as well. So at max, you'll have 2 asterisms going from the third battle round, but at the least it's gonna be 1.
yeah.
Is there anything you want to add here, Ryan, before we look at the asterisms?
Yeah, so when we look at each one, I think it might be handy to say not only what the benefit is, but how difficult it is to pull off its condition.
Exactly.
And if it is difficult, whether or not it's worth choosing anyway, knowing that you probably won't get off the second one.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about with you. So I'm happy that you phrased it super clearly because I was thinking like, how am I gonna phrase that with my crappy English? But yes, that's exactly it. So let's look at the asterisms first, and then we can kind of talk about which ones you might want to go for earlier, and then how doable it is to meet the conditions that are tied to the asterism. So we've already talked about Itzel the Tamer. Companion weapons used by friendly Seraphon units have crit 2 hits. So this is obviously great for any mounted stuff, I suppose. So that's for the big monsters, for the raptor dudes, actually for the skink raptidons as well. To be honest, anything with a mount would greatly benefit from this. I suppose it's kind of a reward for the Coatl's Claw variant of the army.
Yeah, the coalesce stuff.
Coalesce stuff, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is otherwise known as exploding hits, and obviously, the person you want it to go off on is the monster, assuming the monsters are still good, and we are going to see at least one example of a monster where this really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And the interesting thing, the thing I like about this is, in order to get something else that's worth saying is because you have to do this condition before the start of your third battle round. Like, it basically at the moment of the start of the third battle round, this condition has to have been met.
Yeah.
And so you only have 2 turns to pull this off. Now, the question is, are you going to be able to have killed, in this case, 3 or more enemy units? And maybe with shooting, it could be, or with magic, it doesn't have to be with the units that you just buffed with the what am I trying to say? The ability that is bound to the condition. But obviously, by definition, by making your companion weapons better, +1 to hit functionally, you are increasing the chance that you're going to accomplish your mission, which I think works synergistically here. Now, remember, one other thing that is worth emphasizing here is these asterisms are picked after you're seeing what's going on with your opponent. Now, I don't know if they have to be at the beginning of the deployment phase or end of the deployment phase, but either way, you know what your opponent's list is. And that means that you get to base this off of your opponent. So if you know you need to, if you really want that second ability and you got to kill 3 or more enemy units, well, if they've got only Varangard and Archeon, you're not going to do that, right? Like, that's not going to happen in 2 turns. And they probably still have a Mortal Wound Shrug or something. So don't even bother with that if you want to get the second one. So then you either don't choose this ability if you want a second one, or you choose it despite the fact you know it's not going to happen, but at least you're informed and this isn't on your list. I think those are all really good things to take in consideration here. What do you think on top of that for this one?
I think it's good. It'll be interesting on the Agrodon Lancers because, in the previous book at least, the Agrodons were actually the biggest damage component. I do expect that all of the creatures will have a less effective to hit score. Obviously, that doesn't matter for the amount of crits that you're gonna roll. But I do wonder, like, how often is this gonna pop up, and how much of a difference is it gonna make? As far as just like a mounted list, and I know that a lot of Seraphon players like to play that way, I do think it's very powerful. It's probably one of the strongest ones for the melee lists out there.
Definitely. And yet, even though it doesn't, having their profiles to hit being nerfed a bit, almost all monsters are at a
Their
4+
wounds have
hit.
improved though.
Yeah, and again, this mathematically computes to +1 to hit. So it's like it puts them back to their old profile, and then they just got a +1 to wound functionally, which is kind of, we talked about that somewhere else in one of the other So yeah, I mean, I think this is a strong one, and obviously choosing to be more aggressive is very on brand for Seraphon. The thing is, would you choose it if you say only had 2 targets that could do it, like things that have companion attacks? Probably not, right? But maybe it's a second backup option if those are the only 2 things left on the battlefield, and you get your other condition, then you choose this one just to buff them because why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I love to add something to that, but only after we've reviewed the other 3 as well.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so Quetzal the Preserver. Subtract 1 from the rend characteristic of melee weapons for attacks that target friendly Seraphon units that are wholly within friendly territory. So this is an interesting one. If you've played any Coalesce or played against any Coalesce, you know that they use to reduce incoming damage. I think this is the GW way to kind of, reference back to that. But the -1 damage was kind of a feel bad for a lot of opponents as well. So -1 rend makes it a little bit more palpable. I feel like this is a great one to start your battle with. That being said, it really sucks to complete the asterism by turn 3, to be honest. Because if we look to the left here, you complete the asterism if there are no enemy units wholly within friendly territory. I really dislike how they phrased this, or how they decided they wanted to make this work. You get your bonus if you're wholly within your territory, and you only complete it if there's no enemy units wholly within friendly territory. So that means you either have to stop them at the border, or you have to kill all of your opponent's units by the second battle round while they're in your territory at least. So yeah, I just wish you would either get the Quetzal bonus just anywhere on the table, or they would use a different condition, because now it kind of feels like you won't ever complete this but with any certainty.
Yeah, if they had paired it and they had made the -1 rend if you're in your opponent's territory, and then the other one, or if they were opposite territories, these two
Yes.
rules, right? Then
Yeah.
I'd be okay. I'd be okay with it. But right now, it fights against what it wants you to
Yeah.
do, and Seraphon may or may not be the kind of army that can spread out enough to protect the whole border.
Hmm.
Depends on it depends on the mission. Now, the good thing is you can choose this once you see what mission you're playing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and how fast your opponent is. If they're Nurgle, they're probably not getting to your 11-inch deployment zone. But if you have a 50% of the board is your deployment zone, who knows? They do have to be wholly within friendly territory to turn off your extra ability. So maybe you could fight them right at the edge.
But
My
then
thought on this,
with pylons, it's so risky.
yeah, especially if they've got fast units or little small teleporters or
Hmm.
and name any number of things. My thing I'm thinking is, instead of what you framed it as is the kind of dinos list that was subtracting rend, I'm thinking this more as, what if you're playing a Starborn E list, a Magic E castle list? You're probably staying in your territory for a good chunk of it anyway, and maybe you don't care about getting that second ability. You're
Yeah.
more in you'd be giving up the +1 casting we're going to see below, but maybe you're just like, I just want to protect my dudes. And I'm going to stay in my territory the whole time anyway. I could see that being when this comes into play, when you don't mind giving up the second ability, because,
Yeah.
like you said, it's so easy not to get that second ability.
Yeah, that's a situation that might occur against deep striking armies, but I think if you're playing a regular Starborn list, as it is, as they're looking right now, as a castle, obviously, I think you're gonna be going with the last ability, because that's also the easiest one to complete with a Starborn-esque list, and then add this one on top of it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Okay, on
Okay.
to Sotek, the deliverer. So you add, very simple bonus, but I love it. Add 2 to the move characteristic of friendly Seraphon units. This is quite a straightforward one. I think both good in the early game and very strong in the late game, because in the late game you might want to spread out a little bit more. There might be a lot less teleporting. Well, there will be, because it's no longer an allegiance ability. You just get a Starborn, for example. The way to complete this, though, is a little bit strange. So the enemy general either has to be in combat or has to be destroyed. Man.
Yeah, I mean, I think this ability is the default setting ability if you choose on turn one, or at the beginning of the game,
Mm,
because every army would like +2-inch movement, and it's
yeah.
just always going off. It's not based off of your list. It's great, and it's not based off where you're standing, right? Um, and then that other ability, like getting the second ability, is probably not going to happen. Killing someone's general, especially within two battle rounds, the first two battle rounds, is usually pretty hard. They don't want their
Hmm.
general to die anyway. They could what's it called? Guard him with plenty of screen units to keep you from being able to get to him
Yeah.
by that time. Or it could be just a really tough to kill general,
Yeah.
for multiple reasons. So yeah, I think if you're taking this one, you either take it as the second choice, which, like you said, could be decent for the end game, or you're just saying, screw it. I don't have a particularly magic build. I'd rather just have the speed, and maybe I don't get that ability off, but that's okay. I still think it might be worth it, even if you don't get a second ability off.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see. I find
Yeah,
it very difficult to gauge how effective this is going to be and how strong. I
right.
think
I
if you're
mean,
only stuck with this one for the rest of the game, I mean, Ryan, imagine this entire page gets deleted and you just get at +2 to move characteristics for all friendly Seraphon use. That's basically what you're saying right now.
mhm.
Would you go for that?
Yes, every time. Like, +1 to cast is great, but there might be other ways to boost your casting. We already see one other way to boost your casting in this lit or in the reveals today.
Yeah.
And so, like, remember, there's very little +1 to unbind and dispel in the game now. So +1 to casting isn't as necessary as you might think it is on the surface of things. But let's talk about that one too, and then we'll weigh all our options.
Yeah, so the last one is also very straightforward. Add 1 to casting rolls for friendly Seraphon units. It's a little bit harder to complete if you don't have a slan, as in it is impossible to complete if you don't have a slan. But if you do, I suppose it's sort of easy because you're protecting your slans anyway. So
Yeah.
if there are any friendly slan units on the battlefield and no friendly slans have been killed or are in combat, you complete the Teapot the Seer. So personally, Ryan, I understand where you're coming from. Like, you don't necessarily need the extra pluses as much, especially since there's already quite a lot of pluses to cast in the game. That being said, if you're playing Starborn and if it's still very magic heavy and damagey, I can still see you going with with the magic build for the first 2 turns, and then maybe going with either Quetzal or Sotek the Deliverer, because it's just
Yeah,
so easy to complete.
that's true. I mean that, and the depending on what they have in their list, the first one are the easiest to
Yeah.
complete. So I mean the least list dependent is clearly +2 movement.
Mm-hmm.
There are whole Seraphon lists that don't really care that much about casting,
Yeah.
and don't have a Slan in them.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, if you're doing the old-fashioned Starborn Castle build, I think you go with +1 to cast first, and then you go with subtract 1 from Rend, and you stay in your territory.
Yeah.
I think that's just obvious. However, if you're playing a mixed arms kind of thing, I could very well see doing either +1 to cast first and then movement, or maybe extra movement and then +1 to cast. It's kind of a question of how important your magic is relative to how good they are at getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the situation. But the beauty of this system, and like a lot of similar systems we've seen thus far, is that you can choose after you know what your opponent's playing. And I think there are some options you're going to bounce around with here. But I like the Teapot the Seer option because, like you said, it's pretty easy to guarantee. It's kind of the opposite of what we just said about trying to kill their general. Because remember, it's only having to protect him within the first 2 turns.
Yeah.
And not being in combat. You just surround it with a bunch of bodyguards like we always do with Slan, and then that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's probably the most reliable one to get the second one off. But
Yeah.
you do have to pay the Slan tax. Not that that's a bad tax to pay, but some lists don't want a Slan. So yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the overall system here, Ryan?
I like it
What?
a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're losing, of course, is a ton of stuff. You're losing the 2 whole armies in one vibe.
Yeah.
You're losing cosmic power points. You're losing the heroic actions, especially the teleport. You're losing summoning, but then again, everyone's losing summoning. You're losing the coalesced stuff for like better bite rolls, I guess it was, and some other stuff. -1 damage. But that said, I always felt like the army had too much stuff going on. And if we ignore what you're losing and just see it in a vacuum, I think this is a really fun system.
Mm-hmm.
That it's got some interest, and you've got a little mini game that's going on. And then there's this, kind of strategic element of how do I build into this. Plus, we haven't seen what the other formations do. So there could be one that probably leans even heavily or more heavily into the big dinos, which then makes you really like the Itzel the Tamer. And maybe there's some other play with this stuff. I didn't look at what the other formations are, so we'll take a look in a second. But
Yeah.
I don't know. This seems like a great modular build. And if you had to lose all the stuff because there was no way you're going to put all the stuff you used to have on one
Mm-hmm.
page, So, and it could be, as always, that a lot of those abilities got put on scrolls. So
Yeah.
don't be too down about it yet. But
Yeah.
I mean, you're the actual Seraphon player. What do you think?
From a design perspective, I really think it's super cool. I love that that there's play with the constellations. That's so flavorful. I also kind of love that Coalesced and Starborn are gone, because I hated feeling like I played Seraphon and I had all these units that I would never use because my playstyle was just leaning more towards the Starborn side. And bringing Croxy Guards, for example, which I did plenty of times, just felt like a waste of time, because there was so little interaction and so little reason for them to be in that list. Now it seems like we might actually be, motivated to bring a more mixed bag of units, which I think is very cool, and I'm looking forward to it. Um, that being said, I really don't like the system.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, I feel like this is so restricting and so predictable in a lot of ways. I don't understand how they came up with the idea of the great plan is something that is been laid out into the future. There's been all these huge decisions that are bound to the great plan, so everything finds a way in the end, and it just feels super restrictive to me. The first part of it I really like. So you pick an ability, a passive ability, based on what your opponent brings. That fits the great plan for me. That's super cool. I love everything about that. But then what I further the great plan kind of ruins it a little bit for me for two reasons. First of all, you only get to activate your second asterism once, as in you only have one chance, and that's the start of the third battle round. So if anything went wrong in those couple of minutes between the second and the third round, and who knows what all different kinds of interactions you have. I mean, you have power through, for God's sake. So anyone could actually just move into your own zone, and you're losing like a couple of stuff. Their general might actually power through and get out of combat. So there's so many ways for your opponent to screw up your great plan that it doesn't really feel that great anymore. That's one part of it. So I think if they said go starting from the third battle round, once per battle you get to choose one other thing, that I would be okay with. Next to that, I would just have loved for them to reverse the system a little bit, where instead of you picking an asterism and you have to complete that asterism to be able to choose a second one, you actually just reverse the abilities, as in you at the start of the third battle round, you check which conditions you've already met, and then you can choose that asterism that's tied to that condition. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
That would be so much more flexible, and then it actually feels like a great plan, because it feels like, oh yeah, I always predicted this would happen. Whereas now your opponent clearly understands, like, okay, I can ruin in this entire guy's battle traits, their second half of the battle traits at least, by just doing this simple thing.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I still think the fact, I mean, you could have been stuck with this. You choose this on your list writing, and I think there's not every army gets this much flexibility, in kind of setting with the tone. You can know whether it's going to be accomplishable or not based off of the beginning of the game, and you can weigh what's important to you. And I think there's some kind of something neat about that, instead of being like, well, I'm just going to see if I can get all four of these missions off, and I'll just take the one that actually is off. And if I have two choices, so be it. But now you actually have to weigh that stuff. And I get what you're saying, but at the same time, this could have been way worse. And I think a lot of armies would have been happy with this.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure. I mean, I'm not
yeah,
complaining if I compare myself to the other bad armies or that have bad battle traits. I mean, it's not like I'm giving a 2d6 12-inch charge to my opponents for exploding hits or anything like that.
sure.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel. The second part of the battle traits just doesn't feel very Seraphon-y. That's the only thing that I'll say.
Okay, but it does kind of sound like Zinch, the way you described it, the way you want it to work, that it
Yeah,
happens
maybe,
even if you didn't plan it. So,
maybe.
oh, I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, the thing is, there is only so many ways that you can build this kind of battle trait, because we're seeing this with Lumineth, with Fire Slayers, for example. The whole thing of you pick something at the start of battle run, and that's your battle trait. So there's only so many iterations that you can come up with before they're too much alike. So I understand that they went with this way of thinking. I just wish it was a little bit more flexible.
Sure. Yeah, this one, I you feel how you need to feel, but I actually think it's kind of neat. So,
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. I'm not the Seraphon player though.
Yeah, again, design wise, I think it's super cool. I also feel like some of the abilities might actually still enforce us of playing a very specific kind of army, a little bit like the Lumineth ones, where you still kind of feel forced to lean into one specific build or keyword. I still think that the battle traits reinforce that, which for me personally is not as much fun, but I can see a lot of players being happy that there's still some kind of semblance of Coalesced and Starborn in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall we look at the battle formations?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we get the Sunclaw Star Host. This kind of surprised me a little bit. So Vengeance of Azir once per turn at the end of any turn. You get to pick up to 3 Saurus or Croxigore units that are in combat to be the targets. Each target gets to make a pilot move, and then you pick an enemy unit in combat with a target and roll a d3 on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on a unit equal to the roll. This is a replacement for the bite rolls.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. I can see some situations, Ryan, where this is amazing. Because it doesn't say you have to pick a different enemy unit.
Well, they did say something about you can never be the target of the same ability more than once. That might be in the core rules just in general. But I get what you mean. Yeah. In any case, making a pile-in move is actually my favorite part of this. Not only does it set you up for where you want to be standing next turn and maybe block some stuff off, but you might even be able to steal an objective.
Yeah.
Or get you set up for something else, or who knows. I like extra movement is extra movement, So if for some reason with those mortal wounds you're able to pick off that unit, finish them off, you didn't quite finish the job, then you're free to go countercharge next turn, or who knows. So could be something.
Yeah, it's cool. I wonder how strong it's gonna, or how much it's gonna weigh compared to the other stuff that we're seeing spoiled a little bit down here. So you already mentioned there's a formation that's gonna capitalize on the war beasts, but there's also one that makes teleporting key units easier, or just a thing, I suppose. And then there's one that exploits the natural swiftness of the nimble skinko. So I guess that's gonna be something like the previous version where we had the free retreats or something like that. Free redeploys or easier redeploys maybe.
Yeah.
Teleporting is gonna be so strong still, though.
Yeah, that's hard to give up.
Exactly. I mean, for any army, any kind of build that you could come up with Seraphon, would you really ever say like, I think I don't need to teleport this time around? Like, when?
Yeah, I imagine it's bound to the Slann, just because that's how it was before, and maybe that's lore. I don't know. If it is, then we come back to the question of, is your army, do you want to pay the quote-unquote Slann tax?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
But yeah.
How much of a tax is that going to be? Because the Slann War Scroll is kind of good.
It's great. We don't know the price, though. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Overall, would you be happy taking Vengeance of Azir as an ability?
If I'm going heavy Croxigore Saurus, for sure. I mean, it's just extra stuff, extra movement. And the Croxigore, we already saw the Croxigore War Scroll early on. It seems pretty strong. And one of the 2 Croxigore War Scrolls.
Yeah, it does sort of reward you for smaller units, though.
Yeah.
Well, I guess only up to 3 units, so you might as well, if you're running Saurus War heroes, that also counts as a unit. So.
Yeah, and there's a version of reality where you don't have more than 3 units in combat.
Yeah.
So.
Also true. Okay, let's look at the spells.
Sure.
So, fun thing here, as I hoped, the Seraphon are getting 2 spell lores, just like Tzeentch. We have a spell lore that's focusing on the manipulation of cosmic power and unmaking your opponent's weapons. And then you have the one that focuses more on awakening the jungles, for example, by healing your units, probably causing like some AoE damage with an earthquake, and then empowering your Celestite weapons. I think with the spell lore from the Celestial Manipulation, as we're seeing here with Mystical and Forging, we're also going to see the speed of Awanshi to make a pre-movement move or add something to your move probably. And then we're definitely gonna see the comets in some way or shape or form. But yeah, the example that we're getting here is the Mystical Unforging for a 6-up to cast. A visible enemy unit within 12 inches, so that's not a long range. And then you make a casting roll of 2d6. Now keep in mind, if the banner still does what the banner does, if the banner be bannering, then we might get 6 inches on our cast here.
Yeah.
The effect of this spell, subtract 1 from the rend characteristic of the target's weapons until the start of your next turn. And Ryan, we talked about this before we started recording, that rend is one of the characteristics that can be turned to nil.
Yeah.
This is also unlimited.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's interesting. You're creating not a bubble of 12 inch, but you're doing it to multiple units. And again, I don't think this stacks. So it's just -1 rend from multiple units instead of one unit gets hit multiple times. Now, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you used Mystical Unforging before, but it had a much higher casting value, same range, and then made a given unit unrendable.
Yeah.
Which obviously is really strong.
Yeah.
But then again, if you can put this on 3 different units that had rend -1, they go to rend 0. It's like all the units they target are unrendable as well.
Yeah, and if you add this on top of the battle trait that you're picking for the, what is it called again? Quetzal something? Quetzal the Preserver. That's -2 on everything that's rending you.
Yeah. Then this works for missile weapons too, whereas the other one was only melee attacks. I think it's decent. I don't know about the range, but I mean, it didn't get nerfed in terms of range, so and it's only easier to cast now. So yeah, it seems decent.
Yeah, pretty cool. It's an unlimited spell.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to keep your army alive a lot longer, and it's almost like a +1 to save, assuming they have rend. Obviously, if they have no rend, then it's a waste. But yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's probably not as likely to get it off on an enemy shooting unit as you mentioned, because it does affect ranged weapons, but with a 12-inch range on your spell, you're probably not tagging those ranged units.
Yeah, we don't know what Spell Portal does yet, and that's another thing to talk about in the context of Seraphon is what are the endless spells going to do?
Very true.
Because that's been in their history for multiple versions, a big part of the army. Yeah. So I'm curious.
I kind of wish we got to see Kroak, because Kroak has been such a massive force multiplier, or not even a multiplier. He's just been a massive force by himself. I really wish we could have seen the War Scroll now, because that would probably tell me whether a damagey mortal wounds mortal damage causing magic list is still viable.
Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling you'll still do a lot of mortal damage relative to other armies.
Did they actually mention, Ryan, whether it would be possible for a lord to have more than one unlimited spell?
I don't think they've said anything to that effect, so I imagine it could be possible.
Yeah. Okay. Because I imagine in the other lore, it's going to be either the Celestial Weapon Empowering or the Healing one that's going to be unlimited as well.
Yeah.
That's a different lore, obviously. Okay, let's look at the Slant Star Master. So he has some minor tweaks, especially when it comes to his survivability. There's been some nerfs, but other than that, he's still very strong. So still 9 health, 5-inch move. I think this is a downgrade from what he had before.
No, he had 5.
Okay. 2 control, which is his normal stuff, and then 5-up save. He has a 6-up ward built into his War Scroll now, but he no longer has an ability to give himself, or a spell to give himself, a 4-up ward. So there is that.
Yeah, and that ward that he used to give himself was only against mortal wounds, so it didn't protect him in combat per se.
Fair point. Yeah. He's a War Master now, though. And he is still a 3-cast Wizards, which I expected, but it's still very nice to see.
Yeah, one real quick comment about his save. I did the math on it, and his wounds absorption is basically with a 6+ ward, but -1 to his save. He's now the same or better versus Rend 2 or higher. So if they're doing Rend 3, which you're not going to see a lot, or if they're doing mortal wounds, and he didn't have his spell off before, then he's better than he was. But not having that spell before against mortal wounds, he's obviously way worse. Yeah. So, it depends on what kind of Rend's going into him, but hopefully you're still bodyguarding him in some sense.
Yeah, and if the bodyguard rule is if is a 5-up ward granting thing, like we talked about in a previous video, I can't remember which one.
Hmm.
definitely the Lumneth one, but also a different one. Um, he might get a 5-up ward, just a static 5-up ward, which is also very nice.
Yeah, definitely.
I do feel like it's fair that these guys would die a little bit easier
Yeah,
because, man, if you played against Starborn, it was just like, if you could answer the question of can I kill a Star Master, and if your answer was yes, you would probably win, and if your answer was no, you would probably lose.
yeah,
So the fact that these guys are a little bit more vulnerable, I feel like is very fair.
sure. Yeah.
His Azure Lightning is still a fun little profile. It's super weird to me that he's sort of effective in combat, I suppose. um,
It got a little bit better with the crit mortals.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Very surprising to see that, but it makes sense lore wise. He still has a +1 to casting, but no longer to unbinding or dispelling.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
and
the range thing is, I think, worth it. If I had to choose which one I give up.
definitely. I'm so surprised to get to keep this. So, in addition, he can still unbind or banish anything on the table, which is so strong. I could not, for the life of me, see that they would be retaining this ability. So that's very strong still.
Yeah.
So that actually means you could just hide him anywhere on the table, and you don't actually have to see the enemy wizards, do they?
Uh, Not traditionally, but you did have to see endless spells. But I don't know if they've changed that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Going to the right here quickly, Arcane Vassal is also pretty much the same. So you pick a friendly skink wizard wholly within 18 inches to be the target, and then you measure the range and visibility of your next spell ability used by this unit from the target instead of from this unit. So that's pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah, so the big changes there. Obviously, it got nerfed at some point, so there was only once per phase, but now it's just that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It gained 6 extra inches, but now it's wholly within. But I think most of the time that's actually going to be better,
Yeah.
because we're not talking about a big old block of guys.
Yeah.
That change is not so bad. And it lost the Oracle keyword, which I guess was the Troglodon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anything else qualifies that doesn't also have the skink keyword. I don't know. We'll have to see what the keywords are. So that may or may not be something that they lost, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, so the only difference here was that with the Oracle keyword, you could do it anywhere in the battlefield, and a normal skink wizard had to be within a certain range.
Mm.
But I would be totally fine with it just being as it is now, as in just any skink wizard. It's much more clear that way.
Yeah.
I also feel like it's a small present that it's in any hero phase, because that allows you to also do it with your intervention command ability.
Yeah, and also nice here. If you look at we're about to look at the ability below. The difference in the banner on both of these is this one's not once per turn army, which means all of your Slann can do this once.
Nice catch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did not
So
pick that up.
yeah, which was always the case, but now it's just good to know these. Keep an eye on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually kind of want to move to the spell first, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So Celestial Equilibrium, only in your hero phase though. 6 up to cast. Again, 2d6 casting roll, obviously. For the rest of the turn, add 1 to casting rolls made for other friendly Seraphon wizards while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So half of this ability is the same. It was always other friendly Seraphon wizards, if I recall it correctly. But it didn't have a range. It was just a map-wide thing. And now it's wholly within 12 inches.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a really strong ability. When I read the rule over again, I was shocked that it didn't have a range on it before, because all the armies I ever saw using it were in a castle.
Yeah,
So
that's the point I was gonna make. Like, you could see like this is a nerf, but then again, I mean, how often are you actually gonna move? Well, it's gonna depend how the castle is gonna look, right? What
yeah.
kind of castle we're building, but I kind of wish that it wasn't wholly within 12 inches, just because it once again reinforces that castle mentality, and I wish they would do away with that a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, +1 to cast again in a world where that's hard to get. He's already got +1 to cast for himself, and then he's getting everyone else one. And I'm assuming if you had 2 Slann, that they'd each give each other the +1.
Yeah.
Oh no, you can only get this off once. But even still,
Hmm.
one of them would be on +2, and the other one, and who knows what the banner is going to. Didn't the banner used to give a +1
Yeah.
to cast or something?
Yeah.
So who knows? You guys could be the best casters still.
Yeah.
Uh, the you said something about it being your hero phase. Remember, the banner on top of all spells says your hero phase. So for magical intervention, it could be, but then this is you can only cast one spell in the opponent's turn anyway. So it would have no effect
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
did
would make no
something.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously summoning is gone. So just as with Nurgle, they placed a pseudo summoning ability on someone's war scroll. So for Slan Starmaster, I hope there's different ways to still get some units on the ground here. So once per turn for your army, though, in your hero phase, you pick one friendly Seraphon unit that has 3 or more models and has been destroyed. You roll a dice on a 4+, you set up a replacement unit with half the number of models rounding up, wholly within 12 inches of this unit and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. This is obviously like a massive nerf to compared to what it was before, because it could be anywhere on the table. On a 4+ is, the dice gods are fickle and it's only once per turn for your army. So just as with a Nurgle one, I don't really see this being super impactful because you don't necessarily know how much value you're going to get out of this. I almost dislike it enough for it to wish that it wasn't on a war scroll, because you're going to have to pay points for this and you might not actually get much value out of it. That being said, just bringing back any sort of units, any sort of recursion is super strong. And if you're playing with the battle formation that allows you to teleport, maybe you actually can still throw around units to anywhere on the battlefield. Who knows?
Okay, wait. So hold on. Just to be clear, you're comparing it to the summoning mechanic.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, is that a fair comparison though? Playing, I mean, I guess devil's advocate here, because, I mean, summoning's gone for everyone.
Yeah.
So now you have a reinforcement mechanic that's just as strong as any of the other armies that have a bring a unit back. You get 5 attempts at it.
If your
I
Slan lives.
Yeah, but if your Son's dead in that kind of army, it probably means you're already losing. Like, you know
Well,
what I
I wouldn't
mean? Like,
necessarily agree with that, but I know I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
the list where you summon skinks with
Yeah,
this
yeah,
list
that list,
is
okay,
gone.
sure, but I don't actually know
It's
whether that list is still going to be as viable as it is now.
But that's what I mean, is that's not even your playstyle anymore. It's gone.
Yeah,
Like, you're not going to be having a tiny little castle where you keep summoning all your screens.
yeah.
So you're going to be building to protect this guy, I think. And it's like you said, it's also built into your getting the extra asterism. I don't know. I think this is still really strong, and we don't know what other type of summonings type or recursion stuff they might have. I I don't know. Bringing back a big block of Croxagore, a half a unit of Croxagore,
Yeah.
or who
Or
knows what they're bringing back.
Agrodons.
Yeah, it could be really strong. And if you pick one of the units that's fast, I mean, the flying units lost Pterodons lost 2 inches of movement, but they're still one of the fastest units we've seen at 14. They could go get across the table pretty easily. So I don't know. I still think this rule is pretty great, and it wasn't on this guy's war scroll before. So you could have. There's a version of reality where they didn't give him this ability at all, and then you just don't have any summoning. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm seeing it from the glass half full side of things, but
Yeah, and I'm happy that you do. I'm happy that you do.
yeah, I wasn't expecting anyone to have summoning, or in this army never really had recursion, right?
Yeah.
It had summoning, but that's different.
Yeah, I
So
mean, if you love playing the coalesced half of the army, this is a huge buff because you get summoning now, or recursion at least.
right, yeah, sure.
Um,
Well,
okay,
did you want to talk about what else he lost?
sure, if you want to, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, he lost the CPs,
Yeah.
but that's no surprise. And then he lost the command ability to like make a unit fly and that +1 to save. It was kind of weird. I don't know how often people were getting the value out of that, but
Yeah, it was actually
that's
quite strong in certain situations.
okay. It was only +1 to save against missile. I
Yeah.
mean, was that enough? Yeah.
The flying was super nice because usually with your Starborn castle, you were maneuvering around your temple. And that was such a huge block that the fact that you could move over it with a command ability was actually kind of neat for your guards.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I mean, if I had to pick a couple things to lose, I mean, everyone's losing CP generation. That seems decent. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. Last question about the reinforcement. Assuming that it wasn't gonna show up anywhere else, would you rather this guy have a 4+ ward spell still instead of the reinforcements?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the other thing he lost, that I think was pretty valuable.
Yeah,
But
I just think I'm not necessarily a big reinforcements / recursion guy for non-dead armies. So I would actually have been fine for this guy to maybe affect the Great Plan ability a little bit more,
sure.
because they're the ones that are making the Great Plans. So why keep? It's because of Slan.
Yeah.
They made a great plan, so it would have been cool, like almost a little bit like Kairos E, where he could affect the battle a little bit more. Obviously,
Yeah.
celestial reinforcements is a huge thing to affect the battle as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, you mentioned it's going to raise his price. I don't know if I would say this guy's price has to go anywhere. It sits pretty. What's he sitting at right now in 3rd edition?
270.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it goes to 300, but I mean I think a lot of things are expensive. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
No, it's 310 points now.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe it used to be 270. Yeah. Okay, on to the Old Blood. So we actually saw on Carnosaur, obviously, we actually saw this version of the War Scroll. Well, not this version, a different version of this War Scroll for the Spearhead one. And this just shows how much of a difference standard War Scrolls and Spearhead War Scrolls are going to be.
Yeah, some of them aren't that different, but this one is very different. He's notably useful, and whereas one of my SERAPHON buddies was like, "Oh my god, they killed the Old Blood on Carnosaur."
Yeah,
so,
it was very. I don't actually know how to say it in English, but like kommer en kwel in Dutch. So like very whiny about how the Carnosaur was gone.
Yeah.
And he's still very efficient.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay, so 14 health, 10-inch move, 4-up save. Still only a 4-up save. I do think this guy could have used a 3-up, to be honest. But obviously, I'm the SERAPHON player, so control score 5 is what you would expect. So his Sunbolt Gauntlets to 12 inches range, d6 attacks, 3s, -1 damage, and you get a shooting combat. It's fine. Nothing special.
Yeah.
But then his melee weapons are kind of juicy. So his Sunstone Spear has 5 attacks, 3s, -1 rend, or just 1 rend, and 2 damage, but you get 1 extra damage on a charge, which is very nice.
Which the Spearhead War Scroll didn't have.
Yeah. Very strong. Then the Carnosaur's profile. So both are companion weapons. Keep in mind if you pick the battle traits to have exploding hits, so crit 2 hits. This is actually very nasty in certain situations. So 4 attacks, 4s, 2s, and then 1 rend and 3 damage. And then for the massive jaws, 3 attacks, 4s, 2s, 2 rend, and also 3 damage. Pretty nice profile to have exploding hits on, Ryan.
Oh yeah, and one of those profiles wasn't even on the Spearhead.
Yeah, I think they didn't have the forelimbs, did they?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And that's the one that's doing depending on what kind of save they've got, doing more damage. And it of course doesn't bracket, so that's nice. I mean it's doing considerably more damage than what Spearhead version did, and I think it's doing decent compared to what it used to do too. So I'm pretty positive on this thing. And then I mean, like the abilities that come with it, especially the +1 to charge rolls for the Holy Then 18-inch bubble, is pretty strong for a Saurus build, like especially with Agrodons or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Let's take a quick look at that ability. So if this unit charged this turn, and so I have a question about this phrasing here after I've heard this ability. Add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Saurus units while they are wholly within 18 inches of this unit for the rest of the turn. So wholly within 18 is quite generous. But, Ryan, just a question, like rules-wise, we obviously haven't seen the core rules, but if this unit charged this turn, does it actually have to finish its charge, or would it be the same if they had written if this unit used a charge ability this turn.
Yeah, I think it depends on the wording, but maybe it doesn't count as charged until it hits the target. Maybe they even say that in the wording. I'd have to go back and look at the definition of charging, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it's just hey, I'm going to roll 2d6 and see what happens, and it still goes off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would be super unflavorful, but I wondered about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, you could probably also say the same thing about what if someone countercharged you? You try to charge, you failed it. They countercharge you. Do you still get your charge damage bonus? I don't think so. But it depends on the wording. So
Yeah.
if your reading of it or potential reading of it works, then that would also work. But I don't imagine. No.
Okay, onto its terror ability. So obviously, terror used to disable battle shock immunity. Obviously, battle shock is gone, so now it subtracts 2 from control scores of enemies while they are in combat with this unit. Not amazing, to be honest. I think it would have been cool if it actually interacted with the control value of a war scroll rather than just the total control score, but that might have been too strong.
Well, I mean, okay, so I think Vince, one of his recent videos for Honest Wargamer, or sorry, for Warhammer Weekly, said, I think it was him that said that if you've played some games, you start to realize how strong the subtracting things from control scores actually is.
Okay.
So I'll take a wait and see on that, and then also considering functionally what that does is per enemy unit he's in combat with, it's raising his control score by 2. If you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
he's functionally going up to 7, maybe 9, who knows, which is pretty neat. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I suppose my mind keeps going to big units, right? But units are gonna be smaller because you can only reinforce them once now.
Yeah, and if he can eat through enough of them, then enough of those models, then maybe it's enough to win it over with a monster, which has always been tricky with a monster army. You just didn't have much control power in the game. But maybe that, and obviously he wants to charge in with another friendly Saurus unit or somewhere in the neighborhood. So,
Also, I think his battle damage profile is super friendly. Like you only lose 1 attack if he's battle damaged.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of profiles lose at least 2 attacks. So I think that's still kind of nice. You lose very little efficiency.
Yeah, 33%. Obviously, I think some of them I've seen go from 6 to 4, which would be the same ratio.
Yeah,
but if you
it's only 3 damage. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so then is Blood Frenzy Rampage. So once per turn, army. That's interesting. It says a Carnosaur that senses an injured predator will not hesitate to assert its dominance in combat. So the phrasing here leaves an opening for it to be the same with the Scar Veteran.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see about that. I hope it's not the case because I kind of wish you could run 2 Carnosaur together and still have different rampages. So once per turn, army, any combat phase, if this unit is in combat with a damaged enemy monster, roll a dice. On a 3+, this unit has a strike first for the rest of the turn. A little bit weird.
Yeah. At least the monster didn't have to have charged you, so that would have been another condition that But no, I think it's going to be easy to put chit damage on targets with this army if they keep being anything like what they've ever been, is like some amount of shooting or some amount of mortal wounds coming from all kinds of sources. All it's got to have is a damage point on it, and then you might be getting it. So,
I think it would have been fine without the damage condition.
Sure, they're trying to make it imitate what the Blood Frenzy ability had before, where if it slayed any models, it got +1 to wound for its mount attack for Blood Frenzied or whatever. So maybe the Agrodons will have something similar. Who knows? Or something that interacts in a way like this.
Yeah, so overall, how are you rating this War Scroll, Ryan?
I mean, it makes me think that maybe the dinos, they're trying to boost the dinos list again, and especially make up for the fact that they were, again, to your point about costing units with the Flawn, if they always were expected to be getting -1 damage, that had nothing to do with the war scroll. And
Yeah.
so by changing the values in different places and then focusing on the war scroll, we might be getting a points value that makes it easier to take in a non, -1 damage type faction, which of course doesn't exist anymore. But now you're thinking, well, maybe I'll run a Source Old Blood as a sort alpha unit that goes out with an Agrodon unit while still playing the Slon build.
Yes, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I hope it's not too expensive, because not having a ward might actually hurt a little bit more than you would expect. But yeah, overall, it looks very good.
Did he have a ward before?
No, it's just
Oh.
that I'm seeing a lot of monsters with random ass wards
Hmm.
this edition so far, at least.
Yeah.
How would you grade this one in points? Like, how would you say that this would be more valuable than a Slan in
No.
points?
No.
Yeah,
I'd put it lower than a Salon.
yeah.
It's the Salon's more tech, and the tech that it brings, I think, is quite handy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this thing is more just what you see, what you get.
Yeah.
It's
You
but
get a
but
big old mean dinosaur.
yeah, but who doesn't want to play a list with big old mean dinosaurs? So
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Cool. To be honest, Ryan, not the two scrolls that I expected to see here. Uh,
no, yeah.
but I'm happy that we've seen the Carnosaur. I'm happy that it's much better than its Spearhead variant. Uh, I wish we would have seen Croak, but the Slan is also a nice one to see.
Yeah.
Onto some more normal units, I suppose I would say. So the Pterodon's also a very unexpected war scroll for them to show here. They retain their 14-inch move, which is nice.
It was
I
16.
was just gonna say, wait a minute, wasn't it 16? Yeah,
No.
but yeah, everything went well. Most everything went down 2 inches.
Yeah, so 14
Um,
still pretty good.
yeah, 3 health, 5 up save, 1 control.
Yeah.
They're
Save got one better.
yeah,
So yeah.
which is nice. Their weapon profiles are still not very interesting, but their deadly cargo got so much better. Wow. If I think it's reason enough for me to bring one of these units now.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be once per game.
Yes.
So and now if you're bringing the guy that buffs them, going off on a 3-up is
It's
actually
great.
decently reliable.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so as before, you pick an enemy unit that is unit pass across this phase. So this phase, the movement phase, because it has the movement color, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Roll a dice for each model in this unit and add 2 to each roll if this unit is within combat range of any friendly Pterodon Chiefs units. So basically, if it's within 3 inches of a Chief unit, you get a 3-up, and otherwise it's on a 5-up. You inflict 1 mortal damage on the targets, and if any damage points are allocated by this ability and the target does not have the fly keyword, the target cannot use run abilities until the start of the next turn.
Right. Keep in mind that run is also on redeploy. So no
Yeah.
redeploys.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's got some utility, especially how fast they are. I was hoping that they'd buff their output a little bit more.
Yeah.
The melee or the missile profile kind of got squished between the two that it used to be, in terms of expected value, but the range also squished in between the two. So I don't know what its. I think its role has more to do with, just getting out there and playing tactical movement shenanigan stuff than actually fighting. But then again, it is a companion. The Pterodon, like you were saying. So if you're in that faction or you got that ability, the asterism, then it's hitting on threes. It's not a bad profile. It's just
Yeah.
not going to like change anyone's mind. Doubling their save. I mean, like going from a 6 to a 5 doubles their amount of save, depending on if they have no rent. Let's put it that way,
Yeah.
and gives them a save at all if they do have rent. So, um, you know, um, I think I wanted them to be a little bit more interesting because I always thought if I was Seraphon, I was going to probably go in with the flying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean it's definitely a little bit of a boost if nothing else. I'm curious what the points are.
Yeah, these have to be very cheap though. I still feel like they should be very cheap because if you're coming up against a more elite army, you're not gonna get almost no value out of this because with a 5+, you know, that being said, you have to bring a Terran Chief as well. The Chief used to be almost as expensive as the unit. So was it actually better to bring 2 units? Um, it's gonna depend. Summoning one of these units was always kind of nice because you had a 16-inch movement after that, or at least in the subsequent turns. Um, I could still see myself bringing one of these units because it's just so effective against hordes, but I do feel like the Pterodon Chief makes this unit so much stronger, and without it, it might not actually be worth it as much.
Yeah.
I think it would have been neat if it was on a 4+ and the Pterodon Chief improved it by 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. That seems fair enough. I mean, getting to do it every turn. The thing is, it's not also when it's not like the Blood Knights. The Blood Knights version of this was better
Yeah.
in terms of how often it goes off. This is specifically in your movement phase, so you got to have enough movement to play around with to fly over something and then come back.
Yeah. Keep in mind that there's probably going to be speed of 1 in the spell lores to allow extra movement, so there is that. But
that'd be cool. And you said there's also a skink thing that makes them faster. If it makes all skink units faster, then that could be something too.
We'll have to see. It's also interesting. It's not once per battle or once per turn, so you could actually do it with multiple units.
Yeah.
And there's no reward for having more guys in your unit, which I find interesting.
You roll a dice for each model in this unit. What do you roll?
Oh, it's in this unit.
Yeah.
Man, I read that wrong. That makes it so much less effective than I thought it was.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I wasn't sure.
Ryan,
you were just like, yeah. Yeah.
Now I would probably never bring this unit.
Yeah. Well, it was always in this unit, to be fair.
Yes, I understand that, but I just thought that I don't know why I read this wrong because it's super clear, but I thought it said in the enemy units.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's the whole declaring an effect step that kind of messes with my head because it says pick an enemy unit and then they say roll dice for each model in this unit. I understand that this unit is the Pterodon Riders unit, but I thought it all of a sudden became good against hordes, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, unfortunately not. But I mean, you know, it's still some amount of chit damage you can be putting on things and flying over and then turning off the run thing. So who knows? Maybe that's effective.
Yeah, turning off redeploy is super nice though.
Yeah.
Okay, on to... I'm so curious what you're thinking about this war scroll, Ryan. So the Engine of the Gods is kind of notorious for SERAPHON players because it is so crap in the current book. My God, it is so bad. It is probably one of the worst war scrolls I've ever seen in my life. And I feel they still did not do it justice. They still made it feel super weird. It's not as bad as it was before, but damn it. God, I'm so disappointed, Ryan.
Now, what does this kit? It also builds the. But does it have another build?
Yeah,
or is
the normal
it
Stegodon.
Okay. Okay.
And the Stegodon Chief, I guess, as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so Engine of the Gods. So 8-inch move, 14 wounds, 4 plus save, 5 control. Everything's pretty standard there. It has some javelin shots. Not hugely impactful. Kind of nice though. Shooting combat is fine. And then it has its melee profile, which is also pretty nice. Especially, again, keep in mind with the exploding hits potentially here. That's a nice profile.
It did get nerfed because it used to be 3, and I even stacked it against all 3 of the profiles it used to have. And it comes out as a nerf in most situations, especially if it gets bracketed, because it's the only profile it's got, and it gets cut in. Well, again, a 33% decrease here.
Yeah. Okay, so the Stegodon also has a rampage, obviously once per turn army. So again, the wording here almost leads me to believe that it's for all Stegodons, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, obviously. In any combat phase, you pick an enemy unit that's charged this turn and is in combat with this unit. Roll a d3 on a 2-up, you inflict the amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll, and then you add 1 to save rolls for attacks made by the enemy unit that target this unit for the rest of the turn. So it did a similar thing before, where its crest kind of defended the entire unit. I always found it weird that you get rewarded for not charging with a huge dinosaur.
Yeah.
But
especially considering it has a +1 damage thing itself.
Yes.
And this is kind of like a weird combo of the impact it used to do, and then the way, like you said, the Armored Crest used to work, which basically didn't have a charge condition on it, but had to be a unit that was 5 or more models. So I don't know if this is better or worse, or I mean, going off on a 2-up, I guess is better than. Well, no, it's a 2-up on a D3, so it's still 2. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the wording here as well, like a mighty head embracing for impact. Why did they not make its horns and jaws anti-charge?
Sure.
That would have made sense. Like, if you want to make clear battle profiles, as they mentioned that they wanted to do, why not make this the anti-charge thing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this thing wants to hang out with the rest of your army so it can keep, like, what we're about to look at, healing it up and stuff, but, I don't know.
Okay, now for the Cosmic Engine, which was a previously totally fucked ability, as in not in a good way. In your hero phase only, you pick this unit and you have to choose to either harness Cosmic Power or reserve it. If you reserve it, you place a Cosmic Power token next to this unit. Keep in mind, if you do so, that's your entire hero phase gone for this unit. So the entire point of this War Scroll is then, in that case, reserving 1 Cosmic Power token. Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you could also harness the power. You roll a dice, and you add 1 for each Cosmic Power token that you've placed next to this unit. So let's say you reserved in turn 1 and 2, you reserved the power token. Then it's turn 3, you pop the Cosmic Engine, you roll a dice, and you add +2. Then you remove the power tokens. It would have been sort of fine if it didn't have to do that. And you pick one of the following effects, if possible. That's also interesting. On the 3+, you can heal D3 to all friendly Seraphon units wholly within 12 inches. On a 5-up, you can pick up to 3 friendly Seraphon units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Return 1 slain model to each. That's nice because that's also the case for Croxicore and also the case for Agrodons. So that's pretty potent. And then on a 6+, you can pick up to 3 friendly Seraphon units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Those units have strike first for the rest of the turn. Now, I really hope that you have a different opinion on this, Ryan, but all of those abilities are nice and flavorful and super cool. And I also understand that they don't have to be easy to pop off, because especially the last 2 are very strong in certain situations. That being said, there are so many conditions that have to be met once again, because it has to be wholly within 12 inches. Then you have to roll a dice, and it's not very easy to get the 5 or 6+. And keep in mind, you have to have spent your your previous hero phases to reserve some power tokens to make this more dependable. And say that you've been saving for the time slow. So you want a really strong turn 4, for example, and you saved turn 1, 2, and 3. You've saved your power token. So for more than half of the game, this War Scroll has done nothing for you except stand there. Then you roll your dice, you add +3, and you roll a 1 or a 2, which is still a 33% chance of that happening. It just fails. You get to still do, obviously you still get to do your Starlight summons or your Healing Lights, but you still have to remove all of your power tokens. You can't decide to not use your power tokens and then say, okay, I failed this roll, I don't want to use it, and I'm saving it for next turn. I don't understand why they would do it this way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if there's a War Scroll that interacts with him to give him more power tokens. or to change the numbers. I mean, that's hopium,
Yeah.
but I mean that this kind of war scroll reads a little bit Skaven-y to me.
Mm,
And a lot of Skaven stuff works that way, where some guy standing near it can help it out. And there's other stuff too, but the risk reward mechanism on this is not good. Like especially when you word it the way you do. Um, I yeah. Um, there's a part of me that wonders, would you just not be better on trying to free up healing every turn?
yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever go for the 5-up one without saving some points. I'd
Yeah.
rather just heal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think this would have been totally fine if it said in your hero phase, plays one cosmic, or starting from second turn or something like that, plays one cosmic power token next to it and add it to your roll every time, something like that maybe.
yeah.
Or, if you reserve it, you get at least 2 power tokens. But now, if you're saving up for 2 turns, you're still not guaranteed that you're gonna get something good. Because healing
Yeah.
is nice, but it's not returning models, is it?
What's that?
The
What'd you say?
heal keyword is only
No, no, no,
returning
no.
wounds, not models.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is yeah. You've sold me that this is a bad war scroll. Uh,
Sorry for everyone listening. I know I'm really trying to be positive here because someone in our comments a couple of videos ago mentioned that we were being a little bit too critical. But the Engine of the Gods is such a painful war scroll for Seraphon players that started in the previous book, just like me, because it was such a huge disappointment. There was really no way that you could make it work, and I still think that there is no way that you would ever bring this.
Yeah, I liked the old ability that it used to have, where it could summon a whole block of 10 Saurus Warriors or Skink.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was saving up D6s. It worked totally different. You could take damage. You can't take damage from trying to use an ability anymore. But the thing is, the rest of the war scroll doesn't make up for. You kept saying, like, if you do this and you just reserve power, you're throwing away the war scroll. And then I'm like, well, what about its shooting attacks and it's melee? But like you said, it's not doing that much. So yeah, I think unless this is cheap, like what would you put this at? 200 points?
The thing is, Ryan, if you make it cheap, then the other Stegodons are probably also cheap. And why would you not bring a more effective Stegodon in that case?
Yeah. Yeah. What if the Stegodon Chief helps these guys? Like, yeah, I don't know. You take
I just don't see it happening. They want to get rid of all the tokens. We get a token war scroll, and so far, we've not really seen any proof that there's gonna be interactions with other war scrolls to improve your token stackability. Let's call it that. So I don't really see it happening. There's also nothing in our current book that really awakens that idea in me, like there might be something that interacts with this. I also don't feel like the war scroll is important enough to have something that interacts with this, because that would only up the price even more.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay. Don't take this.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would
healing's
actually be
okay.
totally fine, Ryan, with it being like you only get to use one of these abilities once per game.
Yeah.
And then that would be super strong, make it a little bit more expensive. That's fine, but it's an Engine of the Gods. So, yeah, I don't know. Or remove
I mean,
the teleporting stuff from the Slan to this war scroll.
yeah. The healing light, do you think you would it'd be worth it if you just heal every turn on a 3-up?
I mean, sorry. Obviously, this would only work very well with anything Saurusy and
Yeah.
multiple woundsy, so not on normal skinks, obviously. So it's probably also only very good for melee builds. It's fine, but realistically, Ryan, you're probably healing a wound on a Saurus unit. You're healing maybe 1 or 2 wounds on a Croxigore, but only on 3 plus. And
Yeah.
only if it's wholly within 12 inches.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
If
it
it
used
was
to be
just
106.
you heal every turn, that's the thing. And then once you've healed, you get a cosmic power token. And
Yeah.
then you can spend the power tokens to do all those other stuff, all that other stuff. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine, because then you at least get some value out of it if you're just saving a power.
Yeah, you sold me. I'm not. I wouldn't get this. Sorry to
Yeah,
all the people who have
I
this.
just can't really see a point where a price tag on this unit where it's um, fairly priced and not spammable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's either too expensive for what it does, or it's cheap enough that you want to spam this unit because it's your hero face, so you could potentially have like a ton of these.
Yeah. I mean, you could be trying to heal multiple things multiple times. At least you could attempt the ability multiple
Yeah,
times. I think it would only actually hit the unit once, but then again, it doesn't target an ability.
yeah,
Like it doesn't have a target. I don't know. Who knows?
yeah. Let's
So
say it's like 200 points or something. That's super cheap for a monster, and you have a decent melee version of this for 250 points or 260 or even 300. I'm probably taking the 300 points costed thing.
yeah. I
Okay,
mean, if all the stegodons have the same melee output that it does, I don't think they're going to price it super high.
yeah.
It's okay, but it's not like blowing my mind.
Yeah, the Stegodons seem to be more of the support monsters, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was it. We only have the Spearhead War Scroll left.
Yeah. So Saurus Warriors. We don't know what's going to change here. Bites are gone. Their +1 save is used to be if you were like it had a couple stipulations. What was it, like in your territory or something?
Mm,
Or out of your territory, one or the other, and then also contesting an objective, but it didn't have to be one you were controlling. So if this is exactly the same wording uh, as in the regular game, then it got a little worse, but still having +1 to save in a non-save stacking meta is decent.
yeah,
Um, yeah, they have the better of the two profiles because everything's got 3 inches now, so
yeah,
that's better.
yeah.
So I have a feeling it'll be a little more interesting than this, but we'll have to see.
They're definitely gonna have a weapon ability because there's something about Celestial Ore and the Celestial Weapons, and they have Celestial Weapons.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be like a crit thing.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I mean they're tough. 2 wounds apiece on that attack profile is not bad. I mean, and then skinks are obviously your chaff,
Yeah,
but yeah. So don't have too much to say about them.
yeah.
I'm
They look like a decent objective holder.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so overall, are you positive or negative on the Seraphon reveal today?
I'm good. It's fine. I know that I gave a lot of critique on the battle traits and now on the engine, but I do agree with you that it feels from this very, very small thing that we've seen like they're moving away from the Starborn side a little bit more than they're moving away from the Monster and Saurus side, which is fine to me because, first of all, the Starborn side was very unpleasant to play against. I just don't really like armies that only function in one phase. Even I, as a Stormborn player, felt it was annoying playing it after a while because it was just so boring and tedious. Um, I'm really looking forward to mixing stuff, Ryan. I hope you're right that I can bring one unit of like 6 Agrodons and a Carnosaur and then still back him up with some blitzing, lightning shooting slam. That would be super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this army has a better chance of getting to mix those things up than a lot, considering you could mix and match those modular things and at the beginning. But almost all the armies seem to be going that direction, as we pointed out multiple times. So
Yeah.
if that's something you like about this game, where you can take a little bit of stuff you like, then that's good. For the spam players, I feel like they're gonna feel like this edition's a little bit less fun, but
Mm-hmm.
who knows? I'm
Yeah.
uh I'm pretty positive on the reveal just because I feel like it.
Hey, what?
I'm pretty positive on the reveal just because I feel like it balances out an army that consistently seems to be overperforming
Yeah.
in terms of just having all the tools. But
Yeah. There was also always one side of Seraphon that was unfun, right?
yeah, for sure.
Every time. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. And tomorrow we got Slaves, which is breaking the pattern. They've been doing consistently 2 armies at the beginning of the week, every week. And Stormcast week was, starting on a Tuesday. So we're not getting Sylvaneth. I'm predicting Sylvaneth on Friday then. So
Yeah.
we'll have
So what
to
do we
see.
still have left? Like slaves, corn?
Slaves, Corn, Iron Jaws, and Sylvaneth. That's the
Yeah.
order I'm predicting they'll come. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay.
Cool.
So that's interesting. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I know there's a bunch of you SERAPHON players out there. I also know there's some good content creators for SERAPHON. I'm very interesting to see what they're saying about this army. But let us know in the comments what you think. How are you feeling about it? Obviously, there's going to be some very strong opinions because this army, for an army that has two play styles, there's always strong opinions when you lose both of those play styles a little bit. So let us know what you think. Do you agree with me that the Great Plan feels a little bit smaller planny, or do you agree with Ryan that it's still a super cool and functional tool set? And do you hate the Engine of the Gods? Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts about Engine of the Gods. Ryan, thank you for accompanying me throughout this video, even with your sword throats. I really love your positive attitude towards most everything that we've seen. And I'm happy that you were still on board with my negativity about the Engine of the Gods.
Oh, positive, negative. We don't know enough and to be able to say yet,
but
I think it still looks like a fun army.
Yeah, so. I'm very much looking forward to dissecting this army's index. It's gonna be insane.
Yeah. It's a big
anyway,
one.
Guys, we'll see you tomorrow for Slaves of Darkness, or Slaves to Darkness, obviously. See you then. Bye-bye.